We're really looking at our urban tree canopy to help with extreme heat, which also helps with regulating water. We look at our stormwater infrastructure, and not only that, but planting native species that, can be a little bit more resilient to drought as well. You don't have to water them at the same frequency, which is really good.
Hey, Raleigh, curious about how things really work in your capital city? We've got the answers straight from the experts that make it happen. Welcome to Your City Answered. I'm Katie Dombrowski. We've all felt the heat this summer, but what does it actually mean for Raleigh? Today, we're joined by Raleigh Sustainability Officer Megan Anderson and Raleigh Water Assistant Director Ed Buchan to talk about how extreme heat and drought are affecting our community, how the city is responding, and what residents can do to help.
From a water perspective, typically when you have drought conditions, you can see some increased demands. And so that's for a number of reasons, one of which cooling towers, for instance, for large campuses, large buildings, they will evaporate more water than they do during cooler weather. But those demands are relatively small overall. The big driver in demand tends to be irrigation. Of course, when it's drier and hotter during a drought, oftentimes customers will irrigate more frequently and for longer periods of time. So we've seen that in May and June, but we're also seeing now decreased demands. So we really appreciate all of our customers helping conserve our water resources, because obviously a drought is going to impact your drinking water resources, which in this case is Falls Lake and Lake Benson. Falls Lake is down over 5 feet right now. So this will likely be the drought of record for this area. And this type of drought is highly unusual, in fact, unique in that it really manifested in the winter and spring months, which is usually your recovery and refill months. And it was intense during those months. Very dry winter, very dry spring. So this has got us in a very difficult position right now from a water level perspective. But we've seen recent rains in the area that namely have been impacting the Falls Lake watershed, that's the important point. If it rains in downtown Raleigh, for instance, that's not going to help us at Falls Lake. So we've seen some rains in the Falls Lake watershed. So our the water that we have available at Falls Lake has increased from 62% last week to 66%. So that reverses a trend that we've been seeing for months of losing 2 to 3% of that water supply pool every week. So it's great to see that.
And Megan, what about extreme heat? How's that impacting our community right now and contributing to that drought?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We're actually in unprecedented heat and extreme heat and drought right now. And so, summer months are a really fun time for people to be outside more than even usual. Lots of activities, lots of fun events happening. And so folks just need to be really careful. We have a lot of information that comes out from the city to try to help people understand. The National Weather Service puts out a lot of information about extreme temperatures that's helpful. And so folks just need to be careful, because heat-related illness, especially for folks that may have other issues already, health-related issues, is something that folks need to be really careful of. It's interesting because we are seeing just a rise in the amount of extreme heat days that we're experiencing. So, we expect in the next 30 years for the amount of days that we experience over 90 degrees to triple.
Wow.
And so we really need to be thinking about how to protect ourselves, and then also just make our community more resilient to urban heat and extreme temperatures, extreme weather patterns that we're seeing, including flooding and drought as well.
Okay, so we're outside, it's hot. Some days are really hot, and then the next week here in North Carolina gets cool, there's rain, and everything's fine, right? Not really, but tell us about how quickly those drought conditions can change.
We are fortunate in the last few weeks to have some rain in the area that have provided some benefits to our drinking water reservoirs. But droughts, unlike a lot of other major events, which are very discrete, they come and they go very quickly. Droughts tend to take a long time to really become evident. And conversely, they often take a long, long time to fully mitigate. It's even possible that you could have hopefully a non-destructive tropical event that rained a lot here in this area. Falls Lake largely recovers, and we'd still be in a drought. So that
Interesting.
Should give you some insight into how serious this drought is. It really, you can see it in the streams and creeks. So if you're on some of the city greenways, which are often beside creeks, after a storm, you'll see a big surge in the water flow, but then you wait a few days, you go back, it'll probably be very dry again. So the message here is that this drought event is going to probably last many, many months from now.
So it does, Marie, and you're talking about the levels and stuff. What resources does your team have to monitor what's going on with the drought? How do you guys determine where we're at with the water levels, what restrictions we have, and that kind of information?
Several years ago, we developed a water shortage response plan based on a hydrologic model called OASIS. So it looks at all the different inputs and outputs of a given watershed. So, and we can model that for over 96 years. So we can look at data. We can even see how Falls Lake would have reacted in 1929, for instance. So based on that, we created a trigger system that changes month to month based on the amount of water left at Falls Lake. And so we use that. There's a lot of other resources that stormwater uses to estimate the amount of rainfall, which is important to us because, again, if it doesn't fall in the right place, it doesn't really help us that much. And there's even something called, this is an acronym called COCOHRAS, COCOHAS, I believe. And it's local rainfall gauges that anybody can do. And it's kind of an association, I believe, with the National Weather Service. And that provides great weather data in terms of informing us about where the rain fell. And then ultimately, we rely on the Army Corps of Engineers who manages Falls Lake to give us the lake levels and how much they go up or down.
And does that help you with predict like future water levels and rainfall and such?
So believe it or not, it does. The OASIS model can look at, again, almost 100 years of records to predict what will likely happen in the months of August, September, and October. And so using that, we feel pretty confident that we'll be able to manage through this. In the water provider business, you always want to be very conservative. So that's why we're still in a level of water use restrictions. But we feel good about where we are. But again, this drought is so unusual. That's why we're cautious about how we'll react to this one because of when it manifested.
So it sounds like we have some water monitoring software. We're able to see the past, the present, the future. How else is the city planning for future droughts and extreme weather? Are there maybe long-term sustainability projects that are underway or will be underway that kind of help with this type of thing?
Absolutely. So we think a lot about the resilience of the community. And so, as I mentioned, with extreme temperatures continuing to grow over time, we really need to think about how do we protect folks as we're outside waiting for a bus or walking down the street or going to an event. And just in general, your costs can rise for your AC or your heat when you have more extreme days of temperatures. And so we're thinking about a lot of those things. So in the area of um, extreme heat, the interesting thing is that there's a lot of other co-benefits to a lot of the things that we're thinking about there too. So, for example, we're really looking at our urban tree canopy to help with extreme heat, which also helps with regulating water. We look at our stormwater infrastructure, and not only that, but planting native species that can be a little bit more resilient to drought as well. You don't have to water them at the same frequency, which is really good. We look at cool pavement technology and just in general how we're designing our streets in our areas to be more resilient and also greener, able to soak up more stormwater, able to cool down quicker. Really, the danger is that you're not. Some areas are not cooling down in the evenings as much, and that those
Understand.
temperatures just keep building up.
Okay.
So that can be really dangerous for people and the environment.
So you touched on native plants, which always seem like a good idea. So what, if you could each say a way that a community member can play a role in this drought management and what they can do to help when it comes to extreme heat, to drought, what's the community's role in this?
I think from a water perspective, there's a lot of things people can do. This is a nice thing about droughts in a way that our customers can really help. And the easy way is to try to conserve water. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Basically filling your dishwasher or clothes washer to the full max before you run it. taking shorter showers. And the other big one, honestly, is checking for leaks. The big one in a house tends to be a toilet, and it can be a little bit insidious in that people think it leaks all the time. What typically happens is if your toilet fills up by itself just every so slightly, every few minutes, you hear it kind of come on just for a second, that means you've got a leak. And so those are usually easy repairs, thankfully. Even I've done it myself. So repairing leaks, and then also limiting the elective outdoor water use. So, washing cars, power washing, and even irrigating, trying to either eliminate or minimize that as much as possible. And then to touch on something you just said earlier, uh, if you're going to go develop a yard and landscape, using native species and drought-tolerant grasses and other species that just don't need a lot of water.
All right. And as always, where can our residents and community members get more information on this topic?
Well, I always say RaleighNC.gov. And for instance, you can search drought status, and you can see where we are from a water supply perspective. And there's some tips on there about water conservation. But our website is in a tremendous resource, and there's a search bar at the top. And so if you want to search a subject, just type it in and go there.
And I'll say our Raleigh Climate Action Plan, there are hundreds of thousands of things that folks can do. We have a sustainable business toolkit, a sustainable neighborhood toolkit that have a ton of resources and a lot of different ways that people can take action in their own homes, in their own communities, and then just a lot of other things that they can do.
Got a question you'd like us to dig into? We'd love to hear it. Visit RaleighNC.gov and search podcast to submit your questions. Plus, catch every episode. Thanks for listening to Your City Answered, where your questions lead the conversation. Brought to you by the City of Raleigh.